Hi, I'm Julian. This is
I'm Tom. Hi, everybody.
We're Believe, a Ted Lasso podcast. We are also Team Binge. You can
Yes.
find us on all social media under the name Team
I was
Binge.
supposed to set up more social medias. I did not. We still only have a Twitter and a YouTube.
MySpace is the only one that matters. It's the only one I've got stock in. Today, we are going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 10,
Hmm.
which, when it's the final episode of a season of television, Tom, what is it called?
The finale,
The
I guess. Or
finale.
you can call it the ultimate. We call the last one the penultimate. Let's just call this the ultimate.
I never used the term pentultimate. You did.
It's not pent, it's pen.
Tomato, tomato. All right, this one's called The Hope That Kills.
Hmm.
It is written by Brendan Hunt, Coach Beard, and the crew. There's a couple other names. I
Uh,
never understand.
may I interrupt you real quick?
Yes.
Because I feel like The Hope That Kills kind of sounds like a Bond movie.
Yeah.
This episode title, The Hope That Kills You. You forgot the you.
Oh, The Hope That Kills
Yeah,
You.
just
Wait,
the hope that kills is very. I mean, adding you doesn't make it that much better, but it's still very dark.
is it The Hope That Kills You, or is it It's the Hope That Kills You? No, it's The Hope That Kills You.
Yep.
Yeah, that's better. Okay. Thank you for that.
The hope that kills.
I haven't gotten better at this after 10 episodes,
We'll get
so
it. We'll get it.
thank you. This one, as I mentioned, written by Brendan Hunt. I don't understand what the difference between teleplay by and story by and written by is, but I'm going to say Brendan Hunt wrote this one.
Sure.
Episode finale themes for this one is the end of the season, really the future of Ted, Richmond, and then our boy Jamie comes back and is
Mm,
prominently featured in this, which
yep.
is nice. I guess he's not our boy. We never really liked him, but with this haircut from this episode, he really started to grow on me.
We need to talk about this
He
haircut.
looked like a little schoolboy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Episode starts out with the opening, the beginning of a brand new day.
Mm.
Nate the Great's walking around. He walks in the facility to do his job, and he immediately starts noticing that the boots have already been cleaned. I'm not even going to explain what boots are for you Americans at this point. We all know that they're cleats.
You just explained it.
You're welcome. All the towels have already laid out. He's going around and he's seeing that his job is essentially done. He walks into the locker room. Wow. And there is a young gentleman also with a interesting haircut who's pushing Nate's cart,
Yeah.
and he lets him know that he is the new field house manager. He doesn't say kit man. He says like field house
Clubhouse
manager.
attendant, right?
Clubhouse
Yeah,
attendant.
clubhouse
That's what it
attendant.
is. Nate gets very confused and angry because he thinks he's being replaced.
He gets hot very quick,
Yeah.
which I
They,
guess is understandable.
yeah. Well, I don't know. The new guy reaches out his hand to like shake his hand.
He slaps it away. Like
Nate
he
slaps it
literally
away.
slaps it away. It's
Yeah.
great.
And then Nate gets weirdly hostile because Ted comes in and he's like, "Hey, what the bleep is going on, Ted?" And then Higgins comes in and those two are talking to each other on the phone. And then Rebecca comes in, and the way he addresses Rebecca is like, rather than getting promoted, you should probably fire this guy because Nate is volatile.
Is
And
it called
he,
like a shrew or something? Like you shrew, how
yeah,
could you do
true. How
this?
could you do this? And then he's blown away that she knows his name, which I think is great. But they let him know, Nate thinking he's being fired, and that's why he's confronting everyone. They let him know he's not being fired, he's being promoted. So he is going to become an assistant coach.
Assistant to the coach.
Assistant to the coach, not assistant coach, assistant to the regional coach. And then the blinds all open. The whole team's there to celebrate. Everyone loves Nate. We've gone from the beginning of the season where Nate was the laughing stock
Hmm.
to now he's a part of the team. They bring out a box and present him with what?
They present him with his whistle.
His whistle. Did you look at the box that he's presented?
I,
The whistle
s-
is carried
I,
in.
I saw the box. I went to our outline and you put in there, it's like, is this the box from a callback? Is this the original box? And I went back to the second episode where this box is introduced, and it is 100% the exact same
Oh,
box.
is it? Okay.
Yes.
I thought on the top of it they did write like whistle box or something.
Yeah,
So
they
they
did.
added.
Yeah, but it was like this purple box with little like polka dots and little like bedazzling stuff. But 100%, they just kind of like crudely put in a black marker whistle box.
Man, this is why I watch the show. The prop team, incredible prop team on Ted Lasso.
That was great.
He gets his whistle, he blows the whistle. No one likes when someone blows a whistle inside a room.
I was listening to this using AirPods, I guess cheap Apple plug, But like when he blew the whistle when I was
We love
listening,
AirPods,
yeah,
Apple.
and Beats. When he blew that whistle when I was listening to the AirPods, it got incredibly loud. I
Oh
literally
yeah.
took them out of my ears. Like it was like a 4D experience.
4D. That's great. The four in that is pain. Is that what it is?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
I already have ringing in my ears. That did not help.
So then we're in Ted and Beard. They're in the office and they are discussing. I like when scenes start when someone's like in the middle of a conversation and you
Hmm.
just have to pick up context clues. Apparently, Beard was trying to solve some jock itch problems. I don't know what they call it in England. I'm sure it's probably just jock itch with an English accent. But then he asks him what he bought for it, like to spray on it, because they don't have, I don't know, like tough actin, tenactin, or whatever it is.
That's your go-to. Boom, tough acting, acting.
And so Beard says, Ted's like, oh, what did you buy instead? He said, Mr. Muscle. So I looked up Mr. Muscle.
It's a bold play. I wouldn't think Mr. Muscle would be a jockage relief.
Yeah, Mr. Muscle, I would think would be like a
Protein
I was
shake.
gonna say hot and spicy, but no, icy hot. But Mr. Muscle is a household cleaner. It's like the
Oh,
standard cleaner, so he's splitting.
and he said he actually used it?
Yes.
Oh, yikes.
Yes.
That could come up in season 2.
Oh yeah, I bet. So Roy comes in while they're talking, and he lets Ted know that per the rules, he cannot be the team captain
Hmm.
because he's not playing. The team captain has to be on the pitch. Is this a thing?
That's the thing.
So do people hand off the armbands,
They
or
sure
is
do.
the
Yeah. Captains do get subbed from games now and then,
okay?
depending upon the situation. But yeah, captains, I mean, it's definitely more of a symbolic role when they are on the field. And generally, if you're talking to the ref or like dissenting, it's only supposed to be the captain that talks to the ref and has conversations. So sometimes if guys are getting a little bit too chippy on the field, the ref will actually not necessarily pull the players. He might actually pull the captains together and talk
Oh,
to the
okay.
captains and say, hey, you got to get your guys, put them in check.
That was my question. Like, what the role of a captain on the pitch is. Like, are they calling plays?
I mean,
Which is important for this episode
yeah,
because there's a
touche.
lot of play calling.
They do like the ceremonial kind of stuff where like they flip the coin before the match.
Okay,
They'll hand each other like I don't know like little flags or pins or I don't know some of that
sure.
BS. But yeah,
So then Roy lets Ted know he's got to pick a new captain. Very funny back and forth between these two. Ted's like, "No, you're my captain," and he's like, "No, seriously, you have to pick a new captain." They go back and forth. Ted does some
the
great.
framing of Beard while they're going
Oh
back and
yeah,
forth is
Beard.
great. He's just on the couch, just kind of watching. He's kind of moving his hands. He's like, "Ooh, what's that happen?"
Yes.
It's like popcorn almost.
He's watching an enjoyable tennis match as they go back and forth. It ends with some sleight of hand from Ted, and then he throws the armband on top of Roy's head. And Roy says, "This is why it's hard to love you." And then I don't think I got it the first time, but Ted and Beard immediately look at each other and they're like, "Ooh,
He said he loves
he
you.
said he loves you." So,
Beard just throwing up his hands when he got the, like right on his head, which was a great
oh yeah,
toss. They framed it odd. So I don't know if it was actually Ted kind of throwing it. It seemed like they probably just tossed it a couple times off frame, but
they
it
had
landed great.
they had one of those dude perfect guys come in and
Yeah.
throw it on top of his head. Yeah, the absolute glee of when it falls on Roy's head was great. And then we go from there to the team meeting. Ted's got the team together, and we find out that the last game is against Manchester City,
Hmm.
which is the team that Jamie plays for. They start talking about Ted's like, hey, it's just like any other game, and they're like, no, this one has serious connotations because they might get relegated.
Yep.
Colin has a great moment here where he's like, at Cardiff, I got relegated or we got relegated. It was my family's team. My nana never spoke to me again. And then this must be a theme. His nana left him a box of poop in her will.
Yeah.
A lot of people pooping and things in this show.
It's unfortunate. Everybody loves Poop Humor.
Not everybody, but some people do.
Bill Lawrence, apparently.
And then once again, we go into how Ted does not have to deal with relegation because in America there is no relegation.
Oh, this was good. Yeah.
He does. They go through this thing where they're like, "Hey, in America, do you guys not deal with this?" And Ted's like, "No, people that aren't going to make the championship or whatever are just going to go through the motions to play for half-filled crowds." It's very much like in football, like those last games of the season, no one cares.
Well, in like yeah, American football, incentivized to fail because you'll get a better draft pick. Like really the only sport that does decentivize is the NBA, to my understanding, because they do a draft lottery. So like depending upon how low you are, you get like more chances to get a higher pick, but you don't necessarily get the number one. It is dumb, but obviously in America, it's all about. I mean, not that it's not about all the money there in Europe, but there's no way these mega billionaire owners of these MLS or NFL teams are going to allow their team to play in some kind of second tier league.
Sure.
It's just not going to happen, which is
Sure.
unfortunate because I love that about English soccer.
Right. You get punished for failing,
Mm-hmm.
whereas yeah. I would argue, because they're like, oh, the end of the season's all meaningless. I would argue that it's all meaningless, Tom. These are all just
All
games.
sports.
These are just grown adults running around playing a game as the world spins and the universe
It is quite
slowly
it is quite odd
collapses
when
or expands. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
it's expanding. Um,
Says you.
says science.
Oh, okay.
But it is interesting how like so much passion and stuff for like guys kicking a ball into a net. Like it's just
Which is fun. It's brought up a couple of times with Roy. He's like, I'm mad. I play a game.
yeah.
Keely always brings it up. She's like, oh,
I play
you,
games for a
yeah,
living.
play a game for a living. Anyways, I love sports. Sports are important. They teach people teamwork and stuff.
You can gamble on them.
Coach Nate, newly minted coach. You can gamble on them. Yes, let's not walk away from that one.
Sorry.
Coach Nate uh, whistles, yes.
Sorry.
And then he brings in, like you would watch a movie at school when the substitute doesn't want to do any work, rolls in the old video.
Wait,
and
we bagging on teachers again? Because
nope.
I said that last time, but I didn't
I'm
bring
pro
it back
teacher. I'm pro teacher. I'm pro teachers that show videos in class. 100%. My favorite type of teacher. He brings out an interview of Jamie, and Jamie's talking about how, hey, I don't want to speak ill of my club, my old club.
But my next sentence will speak ill of them.
Yes. He's like, I carried him. Roy Kent's a knob, which is a great insult. I think knob should be used more often. And then he calls Ted an American rodeo clown.
Yeah, because he kind of makes mention. He's like, it's nice to be, under a real coach like Pep. I'm assuming you didn't know who he was referring to there. So
No, Pep's a real person?
Yeah, Pep is actually the current coach for Manchester City, Pep Guardiola.
Oh.
So once they mentioned his name, I actually thought, oh, cool, he's going to have like a cameo at the very end. He'll like shake Ted's hand when the game is over. But yeah, he's a world famous coach. He famously kind of brought Barcelona a boatload of championships. Was in Real Madrid for a few years and just recently joined Man City. So
now, where is Pep from? Pep is a classic Irish name, I believe.
I could be wrong, but I believe he's a Spanish manager.
Okay, so Pep is probably short for something like pepper or pepperoni.
Be sure. Pepperoni, I like that. Pepperoni Guardiola.
Okay, yeah. He's Italian. That works. Some great quotes from Jamie during this interview. And I, once again, without subtitles or watching it 400 times, I don't think I would have caught these. But he's excited to end them and send them down in terms of beating Richmond. And he says, I get to put the final nail in the ashes. Instant caramel. It's going to get you. So instead of instant karma, he says instant caramel. And then who throws the chair?
Oh, Isaac, man.
Isaac
he's
throws
on fire
the chair.
Right here.
What's great is Roy goes, well said, after the... And I actually watched the scene a couple of times because during physical comedy bits, I don't know if you've ever looked for this, is like sometimes you can see an actor flinch before something happens.
Oh, yeah, because they know it's going to happen.
Because they know it's going to happen. It's probably like the third take. Nate does not flinch. Like Nate holds until that chair hits that TV. He does a great job.
I love those lines. I did not catch those JB terrible quips that he kind of said the first go through.
Nail in the coffin, he says. The final nail in the ashes, which I don't know where he got ashes from.
It's going to be a while if you're trying to hit a nail through some ashes.
So then we go from that team meeting to Ted and Beard in the pub. They are discussing the names of the leagues. And it turns out if you're relegated from the Premier League, Tom, where do you drop down to?
You go to the Championship League.
And Ted's like, that doesn't sound so bad.
Wait, you lose, you go to the championship? This is great.
Yeah. Beard makes some comment like, yeah, this country also invented irony, which I thought was a great line.
Do you know, pop quiz, do you know the next two tiers?
The next two tiers,
Yeah, if you had to guess, what were the name of the leagues for the next two tiers? So
probably,
it's Premier League,
yep, and then
Championship,
yep, and then mid cake level and base cake level.
almost League One and League Two. So tier three is League One. Tier
Sure,
four is League Two.
sure,
It's bananas.
okay. Yeah, that's like when people are. That's like when the Fast and the Furious movies. There's 10 of them. Instead of like being like Fast and Furious One, it's like, hey, we're gonna make a bunch of weird titles, so you have no idea which one falls where.
Yep.
Pub regulars come up. Paul. I don't remember the other two.
Yeah.
Baz, Paul and Baz. I can never remember
Paul
the
Bass,
third.
the other one. He's like George Harrison, the other
Yeah,
Beatle.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but they've all grown mustaches in some way, shape, or form.
Don't think I did.
So Paul has always had like a goatee and mustache, but the two other gentlemen have both grown in mustaches. And my thought being is
Oh,
that
okay.
Ted has kind of gotten to them a little bit, and their mustaches have grown through the season.
That's a great catch. I did not see that. That's got to be what that symbology is.
Yeah, and they're all talking about, hey, we tried or
Yeah.
something. You gave it
Appreciate
your
you.
best,
Yeah.
even though. And Ted's like, hey, we haven't lost yet. Like we still have hope. And then the publican, she comes up and she says, it's the hope that kills you.
Mm.
Ted, you can see that has had some effect on him. And
Hmm.
he turns to Beard and he says, get the not Diamond Dogs together.
The
Don't call
Triangle
Higgins
Terriers.
the Triangle Terriers. Thank you. And so this leads to
What's
Ted.
before you go to the SC? Can I ask, like, what's your thought on that line? Like, it's the hope that kills you. Like, I feel like I am in general, and I'm trying to do better from watching this series and this show, be more of an optimist. But I think I am kind of a pessimist at heart, and sometimes can think about this like if it is kind of a dead end situation. Like clearly Nate seems like it is. Like there's just no hope. Giving you that hope almost makes when you do lose that much worse.
Sure.
What's kind of your thoughts overall on that kind of phrase and that mindset?
Well, yeah, I think if you can deaden your soul to the point where you just assume bad things are going to happen, you're never going to be disappointed. And the only way things can go is up.
See?
So I understand the phrase, but I do understand, I don't think it's necessarily articulated well, but I do understand the importance of hope
Hmm.
because this would be a very sad world we'd all live in if we just assumed the worst out of people, the worst out of situations. It's certainly no way to live.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, great question. But I do understand the phrase, it's the hope that kills
Is
you.
this supposed to be like a British phrase? Like they say this a lot in Britain?
I don't. Well,
It,
Ted does say something, hey, you got a
yeah.
phrase over here that I'm not crazy about. It was my yearbook quote, and I'm from America, so I don't know.
Maybe that's why it rains all the time. They have no hope, so it just rains on them. It constantly rains on their British parades.
Oh, incredible. So then, so then we go from the hope to Ted Beard and Nate all in Lasso's flat. Nate brings up, hey, we don't actually have to win.
Yeah.
If Crystal Palace beats Norwich
Yeah, Norwich.
by 6 goals,
That's a stretch. I know they're trying to make it a stretch for the show,
right?
but it's they could have made it a little bit more realistic, maybe three or four.
And so this comes back to the point thing you were saying, where
Yes.
like game wins matter, but so do points scored and
So
all
the
those
the
other
only thing that
things.
matters is, and I don't think I finished this thought last episode, but it's goal differential. So how many goals you score versus how many goals you give up. That is the
Okay,
tiebreaker. So they're saying based on the number of points, they will if they score 6 goals, they will surpass Norwich. They will be tied with Norwich apparently, and or Crystal Palace. I guess we don't necessarily know. And they will have more goals than or more a greater goal differential. I'm giving this terribly, but they will have a better goal differential and they will be able to
listen,
advance
I
without winning.
certainly did not tune out and not understand anything you said. I can explain it all. Allow me to explain it now.
Like you usually do. You can just edit that in post and make me sound great.
Whew, you have not listened to any of the episodes, have you? Ted says something like he won't play for a tie. He says if God wanted games to end in a tie, she would have invented numbers. Which the she is funny, not that it's not right or
Okay, well, why
real.
is it funny?
Please don't
Why is it
email me.
funny,
Oh
Julian?
no. But the other part is just the phrase itself doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like numbers can be used for other things other than tie games. But whatever, we move on. Certainly, let's not dwell on what I just said or laughed
I
at.
love the she reference. My wife picked it up immediately. It was great.
Nate says it's hopeless, and this causes Ted to be like, "Oh, it's hopeless. Oh, okay."
Puts
And
his
then
hands on his
yeah,
knees, stares at him.
he like glitches a little bit, and then he departs the room and starts like running around frantically, which leads to Beard doing some great acting because you can just see Beard is essentially like, Nate, what have you done? Like you've set him off. Like now he's in this weird mode, which is once again just great by Beard. Ted runs around, and what does he come back with?
He comes back with the belief sign. I
A
feel like,
belief sign at what ratio of the normal belief sign?
I mean, maybe 4-1.
Okay, I'd buy.
Let's say 4-1, 3-1.
I'd say no, it's smaller. It's I mean, okay, 4-1.
Let's
Let's
go
go with 4-1.
4-1.
Sure,
We
sure,
can
sure.
agree 4-1.
Sure.
3.5-1. But
Sure.
okay, he was gone incredibly long. He says
Mm.
he has multiple in his flat. This has got to be a gigantic flat, apparently.
Yeah.
I know he's a Premier League manager, so he's probably well off.
We've
But
had the tour. It's pretty big.
well, we've had a mini tour.
That kitchen is not small.
No, kitchen's not small. But when he comes back, he's a little out of breath, and we have seen Ted run a lot throughout the series.
Sure.
I was kind of surprised that he was out of breath just running up and down his flat.
So you don't think him running directly to his bathroom and ripping one sheet of piece of paper off the wall and coming back should have taken that long or caused him to do that many loops?
Correct.
My thing was I think he went to different signs and he was like, no, that one's gonna be a hassle to put back up. That one's like, or maybe he tugged on a couple and they just didn't give and he settled on the bathroom one.
It would have been better if you'd hear him in the background, like falling over or stuff breaking.
I think you can. There is some background noise. And during this time, Beard turns to Nate and he's like, "Hey, can I ask you a question? Are those the only clothes you own?"
It's like, no, man, I got 3 of them.
I got 3 of them. Which, at some point in my life, Tom, and you'll know me at this point in my life, I'm just wearing tracksuits. It's going to be like the same tracksuit every day. People will think I'm in the mob, but I'm just wearing tracksuits.
That's like good old Steve Jobs, the Apple man. Like he literally wore jeans and a black T-shirt. It was like, and he did it like on purpose because he didn't want to have to. It was the genius. He didn't want to have to think about that part of his life. So he had the same shirt and the same pants.
Are you talking about the black turtleneck guy?
Yeah, Steve Jobs, the black turtleneck guy that made Apple.
You know,
they made this or the show possible, Julian. Indirectly made the show possible.
Okay. I believe you. I love a good tactical turtleneck. Beard says, Ted's like, you got to believe. He's like, I don't want to hear all this negativity out of my assistant coach on his first day. And Beard very accurately says, belief doesn't score goals, coach.
It's true.
Yeah. So
did you notice on the table through this scene what was on it?
The coffee table in front of him?
Yeah.
No. More belief signs?
There were 2 different whiteboards with a little field on it so they can kind of put the little things around. Nate's whiteboard has a bunch of stuff on it, seemingly is trying to draw up a play. On, I think, Beard's whiteboard, it has army men all over it.
The green army men.
Strategically has army men around the board, like they were drawing up a play, or last time was drawing up a play. And it also had an open jar of peanut butter.
Nice. Nice.
And I think it also had the little bobblehead of the Queen where Ted put on the biscuit
when he
box.
put the biscuits, sure.
Yeah, so some good little callbacks. Again, great work by the prop men.
That's hilarious. The prop men.
Or prop women.
The kit people.
Ooh.
So then we go from the meeting in the flat. We are at Biscuits with the Boss, everyone's favorite time of day.
Aw, what a ball.
But our... One more time, please.
Ba what a ba. Da-bang, da-dang, diggy, diggy.
Oh, I know I'm supposed to finish it, but
No, you don't need to finish it.
Okay,
that was terrible. Every time you say, by the way, when we do this podcast, every time you say Biscuits with the Boss, my mind immediately thinks Kid Rock, Ba with a ba.
Really?
I don't know why, but it does.
Well, I mean, most things bring me to Kid Rock in my life, so that makes sense. Biscuits with the Boss. Ted is down. He's talking with Rebecca, and he's admitting to her that her football club would have been better off with a soccer coach, which is just great phrasing. Ted tells her he is okay with, hey, at the end of the season, if you've got to fire me, you've got to fire me. He is kind of wallowing in a little bit of self-pity, but also recognizing his maybe lack of knowledge. I mean, the guy doesn't know what the offside rule is, and we're at the last game of the season. So
crazy.
But Rebecca is surprisingly helpful here. She's bringing up, like, hey, you being an outsider, like, let's use that to our advantage. You
Mm-hmm.
see the game differently. You've got, like, a different knowledge of how this game should be played, which is, it's a valid point.
Mm-hmm.
And so he takes that and he's like, she's like, shouldn't you be able to, like, cause confusion or create chaos? And he, like,
Yeah.
locks in on that.
Yeah, it was great. I like the back and forth. I like that now that Rebecca has finally flipped, her or say fallen because she's maybe that domino. When that domino's fallen, when Ted comes into this scene, he's like not wearing his normal garb. He kind of has just like a shirt on. He just looks different, and I
Was
think
his hair
his
forward?
hair
Did he
was
have?
not disheveled.
Okay.
He wasn't disheveled quite.
Was
He
he
wasn't that
drinking?
far. He wasn't drinking.
Okay.
Um,
Those are the two indicators of
he
when
was
Ted's sad.
listen, he might have gotten there had Rebecca not helped him out in this
Sure,
sequence.
that's fair.
But yeah,
Good point.
Rebecca, she proactively said, hey, you don't look yourself, like let's talk about this, which I thought was great. I laughed out loud when they did the little thing about like, oh, the Dutch have a saying. He's like, well, I don't speak Dutch. He's like, oh, I'll tell you in English.
I'll tell you in English, right?
Oh, I love that. I just thought that like really quick back and forth and the camera cuts was fantastic. But yeah, love to see Rebecca kind of being the muse for Ted and giving him this idea. And man, Ted's exit. This was the him running into the door in episode like 4 or 5
Sure.
when the kind of gate was kind of down. He
Right.
knocks his head. That was just like a little funny little bit. This I watched this probably 4 or 5 times. Laughed my butt off the first time because it was
the
like
door
he
frame.
kicks the door,
Right.
just hilarious. But then I'm like, he hit that door hard. I did a little dive on the internet. That was real.
Oh, really?
He did not mean to hit that door. He apparently nailed his head on it. You go back and watch it again. Like it is, he hit it super, super hard. He's just trying to kick the door. Didn't realize the door frame was not that tall. Apparently, was gushing blood afterwards. They had to glue his head together after this sequence. So I'm assuming the way they cut it, maybe they came back a couple days later, dressed him in the same garb, and had him stand up and said, "All right, I'm good. Here we go. Chaos has already started."
It would have been better if he just had a bunch of blood running down his face. They would have had to do that that warning in front of the television show that there were acts of violence and blood.
Yeah.
Would have been a different Ted Lasso episode.
But what a great moment. I'm glad they caught that on. I mean, terrible, terrible moment in terms of him, but I'm so glad they caught that on camera and kept it in.
He committed to it, that's for sure. So then we go from there. We're at a team meeting, and every sports show and movie, we talked about this. I don't remember what episode, but they go to trick plays, which are called what?
Well, they're more elaborate set pieces, which is it's a British way of saying trick plays.
Is that real? Do they really call that?
Yeah, they don't really use the terminology trick plays.
Oh, I thought that was
because
joke.
Like you can't really do. I mean, I don't know, it's semantics, but you can't really do a trick play in soccer because like the only time you have the ability to do that is when there's a stoppage in play.
Sure.
Like so on free kick on a corner or something like that, which we see a little bit later. So it's not as common as a lot of other sports like football or baseball kind of a deal. But
sure. Well, what's confusing for me is every time I hear trick, I hear how Joe Bluth defines trick.
Oh yeah, I think of my old college days.
Yeah. So every sports show.
I was gonna say or airport days.
Oh, no.
When I was a pilot, Julian.
Our kids, and you did all that trick flying.
Yes.
So they start going through all the trick plays that he's like, hey, we're going to cause chaos and disruption and confusion. Trick plays. Let's talk about all of them. On the whiteboard, I don't know if you noticed it, but all the red and blue markers, someone has formed them in the shape of a clown.
Not someone. That 100% is Ted.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay.
He's so excited about these trick plays. He's going to make a little clown.
Well, he's the one that gets called clown all the time. So I was wondering if maybe one of the players did it.
He's embracing the moniker.
They go through, it's not a montage, but it's essentially every player gets a chance every actor gets a speaking line in this. And they're going through all the names of all the trick plays. They've got some great names. I did not look any of them up.
I did because I'm like, as a soccer fan, should I have known these? Were these commonplace? So I started looking up a couple of them, like the Sandman they do. Like, we'll get to it when we see it. But that play I've seen before. A lot of the other ones, I think it was just funny things in the writer's room that they kind of came up with. So I don't think they're actual real ones.
Other than the trick plays we talked about once again in previous episodes, The one that I'm most familiar with is the basketball play where someone gets down and starts barking like a dog to draw attention, and then they pass it to someone else.
Yes.
Don't know what it's called, but trick plays are great. Every movie should revolve around a trick play.
I would
Um,
argue like every M. Night Shyamalan movie revolves around a trick play,
oh, very good. Good
right?
for you. A twist.
Yeah.
Way to twist the conversation right then.
It's M. Night Shyamalan. He doesn't do twists. He doesn't do trick plays. He does elaborate set pieces.
Elaborate set pieces. Brilliant. Brilliant. Then we go from there to Jamie Tart at the barbershop. What's interesting is when he gives his interview earlier, he's got this weird boy haircut,
Yeah.
and someone makes a joke, oh, there's no barbers in Manchester City.
Yeah.
Now we find himself in a barbershop because he's in Richmond,
Mm.
because he's texting Keeley about being in town. But he's in Richmond. He looks like a child getting his haircut for picture day.
It's odd. It's a weird style.
My assumption is that he had a different acting gig where he had to look like a child, and he just like per his contract, like Cavill with
Caviezel.
his not Caviezel playing Jesus, but Cavill playing Superman, the other Jesus,
Henry Cavill.
Cavill. That's the one where he had that CGI mustache or
Yeah.
non-mustache, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Ussy guy is back. Did you remember this guy?
Oh yeah. Right when he came on, I'm like, it's the
From the
man.
pilot. I was like, is this guy someone's brother or cousin? Why does this guy appear in the show?
I mean, we've seen throughout this entire series, like they love the callback. They love kind of keeping a theme in the episode and kind of repeating it over and over again. So I think this is just kind of their reason to, because you could have thrown anybody into it, but it's more fun if you've got that guy. And obviously, just seeing Jamie's reaction to anybody trying to take a selfie with him or
Right.
an Essie, like he kind of puts his hand on his shoulder, he kind of like
Oh,
brushes
yeah.
it off. He's like,
Yeah.
took like 800 pictures at once or whatever. It's...
Could not be less impressed with this guy or enjoy him. Of course, the guy immediately brings up that Richmond dumped him. Jamie, of course, reminds us that he's blaming Lasso. He feels like Lasso's the one that sent him from Richmond to Man City. And then this kid is like, hey, he speaks really highly of you in interviews,
Yeah.
though. And so he makes him watch on the telly an interview where Lasso's complimenting Jamie. Say he's rooting for him. He's a good guy.
Chiseled
And then
chin, jawline.
jawline
Yeah.
like the White Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
And then Jamie very kindly takes the kid's phone and throws it across the room,
Just
which is
chucks it.
great. Then Jamie texts Keeley, did you see like the past conversation, what it was?
I did it in my first watch through, but then of course doing the deeper dive, I paused it, and yeah, that was fantastic.
Just a great like detail to put in, which is like the past. So he's asking Keeley, hey, I'm in town, can I see you? If you look at the past conversations, it's the eggplant emoji, some liquid droplet, and a squirrel.
Yeah.
And he explained the squirrel in a previous episode. You guys can go back and watch that one. But very funny. This leads to Jamie showing up at Keeley's door. And who answers the door at Keeley's house?
Oh, Roy does. And this sets up just a amazing, amazing scene.
Yeah, amazing back and forth. Did you notice what Roy was wearing?
Yeah, those socks, man. He's got just egg socks. A bunch of like hard boiled or soft boiled eggs. They're not soft boiled. What are they? Just eggs over
Scotch
easy?
eggs.
Scotch eggs.
Scotch
Oh,
eggs.
yeah. Maybe they're Scotch eggs. But he's not in like pajamas. He's not in shorts. He's just in his like his skivvies, seemingly. He's not a boxer, man. Those seem like tidy whities.
No, apparently Roy's feet get cold because he's just lounging around in socks.
Oh, that's so great.
Neither Jamie or Roy are happy that one is there, that one showed up. And Keeley comes in. She's like, "Oh, that seems like something you should tell your current boyfriend that your ex-boyfriend's showing up." Very funny back and forth. Roy says something like, well, had I known he was coming, I would have made scones.
Clearly sarcastic.
Yeah, and Jamie's like, I don't like scones.
Good British accent.
Thank you.
It's like, I'm not making scones, you idiot. Like, again, he does not understand sarcasm.
He's like, good, because I don't like them. Just a great back and forth.
My favorite is when, like, he what the Keeley tells him like to be quiet or something, and like
Now Jamie's gonna share. He's like, "Oh, can I talk about something?"
oh.
And they're like, "Oh, we'll keep it a secret." And Roy's like, "Oh, I won't talk about it."
So yeah, he zips his lip with his fingers, closes it,
Locks it.
throws the key at Jamie. Boom! Jamie dodges
Jamie
that.
Matrix it.
You missed.
Right. And then the funny detail of Keely's like, "What is this?" She's looking at a cup of coffee and then like a styrofoam cup of coffee. And Roy's like, "I made you coffee." And Jamie's like, "I brought you coffee." None of it's tea, by the way.
Yeah.
It's all coffee. And she pours them together.
I was
Weird
confused.
moment.
Yeah, I was confused by that. I figured she would have gone for like the more sentimental, like, "Hey, I made you coffee," or the more realistic, like, "Yeah, the coffee that you probably bought is probably better."
She mixed them together. I don't know what that means for the three of their relationship. I don't know what the subtle hint is there, Tom.
There could be some menage.
Menage, something
No, I
French
just thought they
word.
might want to listen to Nicki Minaj later.
Oh,
What were you
I
saying?
love Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. Interesting.
Uh,
Interesting where your mind goes.
oh, I think both are. Never mind. Um, Jamie complains that Ted is playing mind games. He's like talking nice about him in the press and everything. And Keely's like, "Listen, Jamie." She said this to him before. She's like, "Not everyone that's trying to help you or that is, in your life is against you." And Roy very quickly goes,
I am.
"I am."
I am 100%.
And Keely gives him a look and he's like, "Hey, I thought you liked honesty."
It was just so matter of fact. Just such a great delivery
I
from
am, yeah.
Roy.
Roy's great. They kiss and that causes Jamie to vacate the room. He's like, "I can't do it." He makes some comment about, "Well, when you're done feeding this old man his mushy peas."
He's
So
like,
then he leaves and Roy's looking at Keely and she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Well, now I want mushy peas." So good.
I do want to
So
mention though. I
good.
think we brought it up in the beginning when you introduced like Roy or the actor. What's the actor's name again?
Goldstein.
Brett Goldstein.
Brett Goldstein.
Because he had never acted anything, right? He was like a writer, kind of wrote
No,
this role.
he acted in
He
things.
has done
Yeah,
some.
yeah.
Okay. But I do feel like he's and maybe I haven't seen his other work, but I do feel like he's kind of a fish out of water in this role and probably hasn't done anything maybe similar to this. I could be completely off base, but I
Sure.
think that's what I love so much about Roy in this, where he kind of seems just so like deadpan in scenes or so matter of fact. Like I love the way he plays that character.
Yeah.
Like we've kind of talked like his football form isn't the best, but I think that's what makes him that much better. Like he's
Sure.
supposed to be this like stud footballer, and he's clearly not. And I think that just adds to the brilliance of the character.
Right. And those socks. Then we cut very quickly to a video call with Henry Lasso, Ted's son. Ted is, I don't know if you noticed, eating out of a jar of peanut butter.
Of course.
And apparently English jars of peanut butter are very small. In this house, we have the jar that's like a gallon of peanut butter, but he's
It's called American Excess, Julian.
never heard of it, but I want more of it. He's trying to. Oh, he makes some comment. His kid's like, "Hey, whenever I see you on the side of the field, you're never calling plays or coaching." And Ted's like, "Well, in soccer, you don't really do that. It's not like football where you're
Mhm.
calling plays." He's like, "I've just got to hope the players out there do what I've taught them, and like he's like, it's a little bit like parenting."
Yeah.
And he like has this very profound moment, and he's like, "When'd you check out there, bud?" Because Henry's not listening
I made a
anymore.
robot picture.
Made a robot.
It was
Which,
good. Yeah.
as a father, like there are times where I'm like halfway through something, I'm like, this is a profound moment. I'm like explaining something to my kid. And then he's like, "Hey, I made up a board game. I'm gonna tell you about the rules to said board game." And I'm like, I was halfway through the meaning of life. And he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can continue, but I'm not gonna listen."
Yeah, this was great. I love the way the sequence was set up because it was heartfelt, but just kind of gets rolled over by his son. I do like this too because I felt like this is some of the similar conversation that we had in the podcast, some of the earlier episodes about like what does a soccer coach do?
Right.
Because when you see you on the sidelines, they're yelling at the players, but there's only so much you can do. You can
Right.
tactically sub guys in and out, but even then, it's minimal.
From
So I
what
thought
I've
that was
seen
good.
in real life, they just wear like super cool suits.
Oh yeah.
And
You
then
have
they
different managers. Some managers go the classy suit route.
okay.
Some managers go like the Nate route, where they're just wearing like the merch, the free merch that they get for clubbing the team.
My greatest wish in the world, at top of my Santa list, which I write every year, sometimes twice a year, is that American football coaches start wearing suits.
They should, man.
Like Bill Belichick in a three-piece suit, but the sleeves have been cut off would
Yeah,
be just
and it's got a
incredible.
hood.
You're welcome, New England fans. Then we're at the beginning of the game,
Here we go.
and we're in the owner's box. Rebecca and Keeley are there talking, and Keeley admits, despite the fact of a long history of dating footballers, she does not actually care about the game of football,
Could
which
kill
is
us.
not a huge surprise to me.
No, she does not
Um,
seem like a fan.
yeah. So, but now heartfelt moment because Roy is involved. She does.
Mm-hmm.
So, some fun back and forth between her and Rebecca. Keeley's like, I know how to act like it, and she's like shouting like a real fan.
Yeah, I love Rebecca's gear too. She's like has all the Richmond stuff on. She's all in.
She says something like, "Oh, I forgot how stressful this is when you care about it,"
Yeah,
which is a good line.
it's so
And
true though, man. Like, I mean, again, we talked about like how sports can kind of make people crazy sometimes, but like some of these big games that I've watched, like Chelsea play, like you do get like so intensely into it.
no, I'm with you. I have some sports teams that I follow as well, and
Mm,
I get very into. And this is one of those things where they're cut into a couple of different people watching the game.
mm.
So we cut to Rupert and Bex.
Yeah, who gives a crap? Move on.
Okay, we don't
Moving
like
on.
them.
They're the worst. There's
Then we
just no
go
reason.
to.
We don't need them. I don't need them in this thing.
You don't need him in this thing?
The only
Okay.
thing to me is they're just trying to say, hey, this jerk is still around. He'll likely be around for the second season, so we didn't want to get rid of him. But there's just no reason for us to get any reactions from this guy.
You didn't appreciate that he had a framed jersey with his name on his
It didn't surprise
football?
me.
No,
Didn't surprise me.
you. Okay.
The dude's a jerk.
Then we go to the group at the pub. They're all watching. Paul's like, "Hey, group hug for luck," and they're
Yeah.
like, "No!" And then they do like a cheers and take a shot. Higgins and his family join in the box, the owner's box, and it's funny because Rebecca does not know how many kids Higgins has,
Yeah.
despite the fact that she's worked with Higgins for I don't know over 10 years. She's like, "How many kids do you have?" And she blasphemies. And who walks in but
The oldest, the priest kid.
the priest?
What was his even name? What was his name?
I think his name's Leslie.
Leslie.
I think he's
Oh,
named after Higgins.
okay. Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, sure.
And then the wife's the wife hearing her blasphemy in front of the priest is like, "It's okay, he's a cool priest."
He's the cool priest. He's like, we have parents that had him out of wedlock, so he likes to explore life's little gray areas.
Yeah.
Which is that like a thing that did they have him out of wedlock? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
saying that Higgins and his wife had their oldest out of wedlock.
Okay.
They then got married, and so him being born out of that sin has caused him to be open to some of life's gray areas.
Gray areas, all right.
So emphasis mine, by the way, as writers like to say.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Then we're in the locker room. A lovely moment here between Roy and Isaac, where Roy gives Isaac the captain's armband, therefore choosing the new captain.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about this choice?
It was weird. It was odd.
Why was it weird, Tom?
Because we've seen all of 5 minutes of screen time, if that, of Isaac. We've also heard him say he hates Rolos. And that he doesn't like breaks TVs. It's just an odd pick because we haven't heard much of this character. We don't know it.
We haven't heard anything about this character. Do you even know what position Isaac plays?
Midfielder.
Let's just go with midfielder.
Sure.
But not a box to box, a triangle to triangle midfielder.
No, he's probably like the circle to circle, which is like the very middle.
No, I know. I've seen one.
It's just odd. I feel like what they're trying to do with him breaking the TV, him saying like never stop breaking TVs, which is a good line. Roy probably sees a little bit of himself in him because he talks about like Roy always plays angry and mad at the grass. Right. So maybe that's kind of why. But it is a weird choice. But and looking at the rest of the team, I don't think there's another good choice. Like Danny Rojas, sure, he's like a star forward now for the team, but I don't think he's captain material. to lead the team. So I think it's as good a choice as
Good
any.
point. Maybe it's from like a senior standpoint. Isaac seems like he's been on the team for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, from an emotional standpoint, he's willing to. He's willing. He's outspoken. We'll say that. There's definitely you've heard more from Isaac than say maybe
Yeah.
some of the other
Mm-hmm.
players. Then this rolls into Ted's pregame speech,
Mm-hmm.
which everyone loves a coach's pregame speech. And Ted's like, listen, I'm not crazy about the phrase you guys have out here that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hope that kills you. He's like, I believe in hope. I believe in belief. And he's like, I've got one question. Do you believe in miracles? And he's like, don't answer that now. And then he waits a beat and he's like, but if you believe in miracles, join me up here so we can do this
Well, no,
cheer.
he tells them like don't say it out loud. Like you don't have to answer it to the group, but answer it to yourself because he wants them to say like, hey, do you believe in miracles? Think about it internally.
And do you believe in miracles? Do you know where the origin of that is from?
Yeah, it's the classic. I'm not too sure what year it is. 80s, 90s. It had to have been 80s, but
Yeah.
that's when the U.S. Olympic team beat the Russians in hockey.
In hockey.
Yes.
If you ever get a chance to watch the 30 for 30 about that, have you seen that 30 for 30?
Haven't, no.
Okay, so real quick, that 30 for 30 is from the perspective of the Russians.
Oh.
And like it's like a bunch of like kind of poor Russians that grew up in the Soviet Union, and like Americans were like, oh, Soviets are bad, Russians are bad.
Yeah.
But then when you look at like the kids that played on the hockey team for Russia, like they weren't like evil people. And so like there's this huge like America's so happy we beat, the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And the Russians are like, just normal guy. It's a very interesting perspective on like, hey, like the kids on the Russian hockey team were not like evil people.
It's just weird. It's like, yeah, you're just taught to villainize or demonize a certain group of people. And like, yeah, it's kind of like that Cold War era.
Sure.
We have to hate the Russians and the Soviets. And, it's unfortunate, but there's a lot of that stuff that still happens today for a lot of groups of people, which is terrible. And I think if this show teaches us anything, it's, you need to not judge a book by its cover and learn more about
totalitarian governments. Exactly. I agree with you 100%. No, but do watch that 30 for 30. I did a poor job of explaining it, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Viewing. And this brings me to, if you've watched this episode a couple of times and like a coach's pre-locker room speech in shows and movies is like a very important moment. And some are done extremely well, but I think at a certain point they've all kind of been done.
Oh yeah.
And so like this one, I just remember like my first couple of viewings, I enjoyed it, but then on this one, I was like, doesn't really say much. She's like, do you believe in miracles?
Yeah.
And then, which I do believe in miracles. I love miracles. They happen all the time. The miracle of life, Tom.
I wasn't saying it wasn't a miracle.
But I do disagree with you on that. But like, I really love the show Friday Night Lights.
You do.
You will leave your opinion of Friday Night Lights vacant. But Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights, when I watch it the first time around, in my mind, I'm like, oh, Coach Taylor always gives these great speeches. And then when you watch it again, you're kind of like, he didn't say a whole lot there.
You don't have to, man. You're talking to I guess in Coach Taylor's thing, you're just talking to high school kids. Like, as long as you just say a couple buzzwords, they'll be jazzed and super excited.
Sure.
But yeah, like most like movie scenes like these or shows, it's really just saying buzzwords, saying things that sound
and then
getting
the music to crescendo at the right moment.
Which I feel like a good coach should have this music going on actually in the background. It would make it a lot better. As opposed to it being added in post in the TV show.
You don't think Who Let the Dogs Out playing at full blast in the background and while they're giving the speech does the same thing? It's like a hard violin crescendo.
I think that would ruin this Full House moment.
I'll say this one last thing is Bill Lawrence, the creator of this show, one of the creators of this show. I listened to him. It was either on a podcast or an interview, but he was talking about Scrubs and how at the end of each episode of Scrubs, there's like a Full House moment where something like profound is said. It's like, oh, the thing is, when you think about friendships, it's really just about having friends. And they wanted to do a book where they were going to take like the end of Scrubs episodes and like make these profound sayings. And then they sat down and started listening to like what they said at the end of episodes, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that really isn't saying a whole lot.
Yeah.
It was just like buzzwords."
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what I think about when I think about coaches' speeches in the locker rooms. But I do love Ted. I do believe in miracles. I think people should believe in yourself. I think everyone should look at the person next to them
Oh God, here we go.
and really decide that this moment is the most important moment in their lives. I think that in these next 45 minutes, everyone should give 110%. And I think also that this is our destiny, that some sort of supernatural thing put us here for our destiny.
Everybody, hands in, let's go!
Let's go! Yeah, so I just went through all of the coaches' speeches.
We nailed it.
Roy, they go to break it down.
Coaches can use that audio if they would like.
You're welcome. Play that in your locker room to win the Super Bowl, Cardinals.
We'll allow it.
Roy, they go to break down, and it's like, and Ted's like, "Hey, Captain, break us down." He turns to Roy. Roy gives him the old, "Hey, it's not me anymore. It's Isaac." And then what does Isaac do? He counts down from what?
This was like giving Isaac the captain's band was silly, but if it all just meant this one joke, I'm in. Because his joke was so great. I laughed out loud. He's like, they finally like, "Oh, right, cool. Isaac's the new captain." He's like, "All right, Richmond on 12. 1, 2." And then
everyone's
he goes
like looking around.
What is going on? The way the camera pans around everybody's reaction is great. And then for some odd reason, because apparently he can't count, he skips 8.
Sure.
Like, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, it's just comedy gold.
This is a good example of if you go on Reddit will have some sort of weird theory for everything. I read a post about how he skips 8 because Roy would typically be like in the 8th position, or like some sort of number represents Roy. So he skips Roy because Roy is not going to be in the lineup. I think that person on Reddit is crazy and looked way too hard into this. I think it just goes to show that Isaac is maybe not an attention to detail type of captain.
Yeah, that's a polar opposites takeaway from this scene. Like my takeaway is the guy's just not that bright. He missed 8.
Sure.
Versus the internet giving him a lot of credit.
A lot of credit.
But 8 is kind of generally a midfielder number. Like, so who knows?
Oh, Tom, did you write that theory on Reddit? You're just too ashamed to bring it up right now?
The famous Chelsea midfielder, Frank Lampard, who also has a famous chant that
Love
we'll
Lampard.
get into. Yeah, big fan.
So then, kickoff on the pitch. Jamie is, I think, taunting Roy. He's like, he's going to do the kickoff. He's taunting Roy. And this funny moment where Ted like hops into the camera and he's like, "Hey, Jamie. Hey, buddy. How are you? Good luck." And like, Jamie's like, "Mind games.
What's this guy doing?"
Yeah, this guy's playing 3D chess. And the announcers, listen, throughout the show, I've enjoyed the announcers.
Oh, yeah, Arlo is fantastic.
They use the announcers in a way that, like, kind of explains plot. And if you go back a couple episodes, maybe I complain about the announcers. But in this, like, they explain some plot points, they reiterate some things, and then they just have some great lines. They have the Zorro conversation. And then we have this moment where Ted still does not understand offsides. He's like, "Tell me how that was offsides." No, literally, tell me how that's offsides. And then we cut to Beard explaining to him, and apparently at some point, Beard was using the condiments, I'm assuming at the pub, to describe what offsides is.
Well, again, the announcers do a great job because the announcer's like, "Oh, and here comes the assistant coach to talk strategy about what's going on in the next sequence." And he's telling him, he's using condiments to tell him what offsides is.
He's like, "Listen, when the Heineken was by the vinegar and the ketchup or whatever." And there is some legitimate soccer being played, or some football being played during this.
Is there?
Tom, how do you feel about the football that's happening on screen?
Is there legitimate soccer playing? That's questionable. Yeah, it's. I mean, there's no reason to gripe about it. This show is not about the soccer. The soccer is laughable in my opinion.
The show's not about the soccer, Tom.
Yeah, it's
the same way it's not about wins and losses. This show's not about soccer. It's about how you feel in your soul. That's what it is. This ends with they try the Sandman. I think Nate suggests, "Hey, call the Sandman." It's like a corner kick or something.
He screams it out. Apparently, they hear it from halfway around the pitch.
Sure.
But yeah, you kind of get Rojas kind of screaming the Sandman. And this is a play that is used in soccer.
Is the
Not
Sandman easily explained? Because I would ask you to explain the Sandman.
It's just so what they're doing is what's referred to as a dummy. So
Okay.
when a player lets the ball go between their legs, it's called dummying the ball. So you're
Okay.
pretending like you're gonna like take a shot or you're gonna
Right.
dribble it or whatever, and you're letting it go through your legs. So what'll happen is like if you've got a team that's kind of cheating and they're not leaving anybody in the top of the box, they're kind of assuming they're gonna kick it in the inside the 6 yard box and try to get a header goal. That team can see that and they'll throw just a hard pass to the top of the 18. A couple guys could dummy it to leave it open for the guy on top. So it does happen, and there's been goals scored from it, very impressive ones. You can go watch on the internet. If you probably search the Sandman goal, you're not going to find it because, to my knowledge, that does not exist only in Ted Lasso. But impressive goal and impressive shot, but unfortunately saved.
For the record, when I said, "Hey, was that easily explainable?" 10 minutes ago, you could have just said no.
How did I do? No.
Yeah. Okay.
Listen, we have like a 3% British audience, and they're loving that talk right there.
Oh, that's true. They are. Yes, please send us your British tweets. I don't know what those are.
I think they're biscuits.
So then we are in the locker room at half. It's 0-0, and Richmond has somehow held on.
Yep.
Classic sport movie trope. At halftime, we're at 0-0. We're in the locker room. The coaches are debating. Ted, Beard, and Nate are debating something. On rewatch, I assume it's whether or not Roy's going to go in.
No.
You don't think so?
No, they're not talking about Roy. Ted and
because Ted says I'm going to go with my gut on this.
No, well, but I think Ted is listening into the conversation. I believe Beard and Nate are really the ones that are discussing what they should do. Because Nate is like thinking we need to secure up the defense. We need to put in another defender. Or Beard is likely say we got to put some more attacking or whatever in. And Ted's like, no, we need our capitan.
Beard's like, we need a lot of speed on the outside.
Yeah,
a lot of speed.
Speed.
So then Sam Obasanya, our boy, says, "Hey, what's the Crystal Palace score at?" Because obviously Crystal Palace is up 6 goals. Then Ted says, "Hey, no, we're not playing for a tie." And he says, "Ain't nobody gonna kiss their sister." Are you familiar with this phrase? Or had you heard this before?
Very much. Yeah, growing up playing sports, 100%. Especially if playing soccer, like kissing your sister is known as a tie.
Okay.
Had you never heard it before?
I was not as familiar with it as you, but there's not a lot of ties in chess club. So I won't go into what this means, but essentially kissing your sister is like a kiss is a good thing, but if it's with your sister, it's a bad thing.
Okay. I think you need to explain that part of it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess, yeah. If you're okay with kissing your sister, whatever. So Ted's like, we're playing for a win, and Roy, you're playing in the second half, and Roy, very importantly, gets that armband back.
Yeah,
which I'm sure is all sweaty, and they just keep handing it back and forth, and it certainly is not.
It's like a youth-looking armband too. It's like one that I literally wore when I played soccer. I think they've got like more legit, cooler-looking ones nowadays.
The Premier League is like a gold embroidered.
I think they are. I think they're like yellow. They've got some sort of
diamonds.
I think they might actually have the Premier League logo on it. Maybe, I don't know, but it was just funny seeing that because it took me back to my youth soccer days.
Sure. Can I call you Skipper?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, Skipper. So then we're the second half. The announcers make some comment like, surprising moves by Lasso. Roy Kent, who is, to be polite, very slow, is now out on the field. And then we cut to Rupert, and Rupert says something like he's an oxygenarian. He's complaining about how old Roy is, which is just a classic sports thing where we're watching sports and like this guy who's an elite athlete like throws an interception or doesn't kick a ball far enough.
Right.
And we're like, come on, man. Why didn't you do that like phenomenal thing thinking we from the couch, 40 pounds overweight, could do something very similar?
It is true. I do that a lot with quarterbacks for some certain teams that we play.
Sure.
Or watch.
Yeah, so...
Now, can I ask, is it
yes,
an oxygenarian or an octogenarian?
Whew. I was assuming it was someone that needed a lot of oxygen.
I mean, you could make the argument that they also need a lot of oxygen, but I believe it's octogenarian. Somebody that's in their 80s.
Listen, you had the opportunity to let that go. This is why you're not Lasso level 7, is you had to point out my faults, which is unfair.
It's not your fault. It's your strategic
Placement of letters and words.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I was gonna go back. I was thinking of what was the trick plays? It's your elaborate set piece.
Elaborate set piece. Yes. And then Manchester City, they finally score a goal on a penalty kick.
Yeah.
From my view, and don't watch a lot of soccer, that penalty kick looked like he kicked it from about 3 yards away. Like he was so close. I thought there was like a certain distance they kicked from.
It's 12 yards.
Okay, 12 yards.
12 yards. It does look, it's funny how close it looks when you're watching it on TV. And then when you are standing in the penalty box having to take that shot,
Sure.
It seems like you're a mile away.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty crazy.
Oh, you don't have to tell me. Once again, I played in my youth.
Yeah.
Sereno soccer, baby. When they score the goal, Paul in the pub shrieks. Just this like high pitched
doesn't
shriek.
stop. Yeah.
It's so great. And then we have the scene where Jamie has a breakaway. He's driving down the field, and who stops him?
How about our tortoise Roy?
Old man Roy, the tortoise stopping the hare. And then we have this sad moment, sad music. Roy is injured on the field.
I love the way they frame this too, or the way they set it up, because he kind of made that tackle. Both Jamie and Roy are on the ground. You don't necessarily know that they're hurt right now.
Keely's cheering. It cuts
exactly.
to Keely.
It cuts to Keely and Rebecca up in the box, and you kind of see that reaction from Keely, which I think is great because it kind of sets up, what's going to happen in this upcoming scene. But I really like the way they kind of did that, and then it kind of breaks with kind of the team going to Roy and going to help him up.
And Roy very articulately is like, oh, I think I have injured my knee in some way. Doesn't use any profanity. Sam's the one that goes to help him up. But in a callback to a previous episode where Sam gets injured and Roy is helping him up, and then he puts him back down. And he's just like, hey, listen to the crowd. And so the crowd is chanting for Roy. And the chant is what, Tom?
He's here, he's there, he's every blank where. It's a very, and they say the player's name. That's a very classic chant that's been used a lot in soccer, and you're more or less going to replace the person's name at the end with something else. But what's really funny, I did a little dive on that to see like how often that was used, and apparently one of the players at the team or the fans used to do it for was like didn't like foul language, didn't want like people saying that.
Oh, really?
So he said that during an interview, and the next game when he scored a goal, the crowd chanted it. They said, he's here, he's there, he doesn't, he's not, or we're gonna have to cut this and change this.
Nope.
I know you're not going to.
We give it all in.
All right. He's here, he's there, we're not allowed to swear. And then
great.
And then they cheer his name, which I thought was just fantastic.
He's here, he's there, we're not allowed to swear. That's great.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah.
I like it. Good for that guy.
But this made me think of, and I mentioned it earlier, like Frank Lampard is a classic Chelsea player. There's a, like they kind of do they call it Super Frank Lampard, but they kind of do it like a super Frank. And they can kind of like do it over and over again. They kind of start quiet and kind of ramp it up. It's just kind of one of many chants that you see kind of repeated for different players, but a lot of fun. And I'm super glad they did it in this.
Yeah. That was it's a good cheer. Roy appreciates it. Sam he's like, hey, just enjoy it.
Enjoy the moment. Yeah, it was great.
Then he brings him up, and the announcer says something like, Roy Kent would never leave on a stretcher. Roy's gonna walk himself off. Roy does the clapping thing. Everyone loves to clap to the crowd.
He kind of does the Roy pigeon walk out, like half limping, half just kind of Roy walking.
Yep. He gives Ted a nod, and then he goes down to the tunnel. When they're injured like that, they just leave out the tunnel? They don't go to the sideline and just watch the rest of the game?
They don't do this. This is TV magic.
Okay.
Like, going back to the locker room and the scene with Keely, this is all just for TV. Obviously, you'd have your physios come out. They would pull you off. They'd probably do a little bit of work on you on the sidelines, realize, oh, this is a big deal. Let's take you in the back room. Let's get MRIs. Let's do all that stuff that you would probably have at the club. So the fact that he's back in the locker room all by himself without any physios or anything is a little suspect, but I get what they're doing.
Sure. So Roy's in the locker room. He's all by himself. Sad music's playing. We see Roy essentially at the end of his career with some sort of injury. Even the announcers are like, hey, with that kind of
Yeah, it's just the
injury,
last
this
time we see
this
Roy.
feels like a goodbye. And Keeley comes down. Very nice moment, although Roy reacts a little bit angrily. He's kind of telling her to leave the locker room, but she can tell he needs some support. And so, very lovely moment. She sits with him and comforts him, despite him yelling at her repeatedly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like footballers and stuff like that, when you're in the moment and like, obviously you kind of mentioned like, hey, you're not supposed to be here kind of a thing because your adrenaline's going like crazy
Sure.
after having this whole stands chanting your name and everything. But
Oh, I
I
think
mean,
we've all been angry telling someone just to like give us space.
yeah,
So I can relate in that. Well, at least I can relate in that sense. You're a
yeah.
much nicer person. But she, as a good, friend person, sticks it out with him, and
hmm
finally he
And listen, if you got to go out, I mean, what a way to go out than stopping Jamie from a tackle that potentially saved the game.
messing up that page boy haircut.
Yeah,
Then we cut back to the stadium. The crowd is all getting on their phones,
yeah.
which is a funny, like, modern thing that happens. Is they're all getting the score alert. Crystal Palace essentially scored 6 goals
hmm
or had 6 goals
I would
on.
assume that like maybe it was 5-0 and they scored that six, and now everybody in the stands is getting that alert saying, "Hey, they scored six, and that game is over."
So Richmond just needs.
So all they need is a tie at this point.
And Ted immediately turns on it. He went from, hey, we're playing to win to, guys, we just need a tie,
The
which
beard
is very
scream is
funny.
great too. Like, get it out.
Yeah.
One thing to mention on this, so um, this does happen a lot in the last game of Premier Leagues because people are fighting for their lives. Generally, the team that wins the Premier League, they've probably won a handful of games before because they've established enough points, but there's always a handful of teams that are potentially being relegated. So every single Premier League game, when they play their last one of the season, I believe it's their 38th game of the season, um, they all play at the exact same kickoff time and the exact same day. So
Really?
every single team in the Premier League is playing at the same time.
Huh.
So that way, no team has an advantage saying, "Oh, this team is tied, so we don't have to win. We can do whatever."
Oh, interesting.
So when they make that mention of, and it happens a lot where, for some reason you'll be watching a game, the last game of the season, and the crowd goes wild. You're like, "Why is the crowd going wild?" It's because they got the text or whatever that something happened. So this is definitely true to life.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of times in football where they're in the playoffs or whatever, and they're like, hey, we can sit starters or whatever because we
Yep.
don't have to win this.
hmm
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like football, soccer, there's an older game that has their stuff together.
Yeah, almost.
So Richard gets injured, flops on the field.
This
He's
is
the
great.
French player. I don't think I knew his name until this moment, but he is like pounding the ground. He's in so much pain. The announcers are like, is he doing it up out there a little bit? And then someone's like, oh no, he's really injured. And as soon as the announcer says, oh, he's really injured, he pops up and he's fine. So we get to see a soccer player flop, which is
That was
great.
great. Beard even calls it out. He's like, "Oh, way to sell it, Ricard." Yeah.
And Beard's like, yeah, you sell it. Oh, that's great.
It was good. Like even when he wrote, and this happened so much, is why again we talked about Americans don't liking football. It's scenes like this where you got fouled, you could sell it, but
Sure.
he does that extra two
He's
rolls.
just pounding on the
And,
ground.
yeah,
And then, all of a sudden my legs work, and
Yeah.
I'm an elite athlete.
I was
again.
watching my wife. She even like rolled her eyes. She's like, "Oh God."
Yeah. Then Isaac calls the Lasso special, which you got to just suspend a little bit of
disbelief. Yeah.
disbelief here, because the Lasso special is essentially a American football play done on the soccer field, which they get down in like 3-point stances. They're acting like linemen. The announcer goes, I'm sorry, is Zorro yelling out numbers and colors? Because Zorro's like, blue 48, which is the classic like quarterback move. Sam goes in motion.
Yeah, that was good.
I mean, the offensive line can't move like that, so they would have been
Well,
called
no.
for a false start.
No, the offensive line wasn't moving.
They were doing
they were set.
Okay, all
I
right.
think it's once he said Zorro, once he says hike, then they start moving, pretending like they're blocking people, and they start slowly going forward. So none of this is like illegal. Like it's
I would
obviously
flag on the play,
yeah,
delay a game. I don't know, offside.
it's comical how Man City is responding because generally all the defenders would have just dropped back, like, and then the midfielders would be right up next to it, like, what are they doing? But it was just, it's funny TV.
Sure.
It was good.
Arlo's like, I'm confused too. He's like, oh, Manchester City's confused. Everyone's confused. Sam goes deep and then passes across to Danny Rojas. Danny Rojas does that really cool sidekick, and they score. And everyone celebrates. And because it's American football, everyone chants USA,
I don't think they
USA,
did. But
USA.
do you
That's what I
believe in
was chanting. Do you
miracles?
believe in miracles? And while everyone's celebrating, what happens?
Yeah, so Jamie pulls that ball out of the net, and like the back of my mind, the second Jamie pulls that ball out of the net, I'm like, they're gonna lose.
Yeah.
Like I knew it. And
Oh,
and they mentioned in the beginning, like when Jamie he has a breakaway in the beginning, he's like the announcers say, oh, he could pass the ball or he could take the shot. He takes the shot and he misses. I'm like, all right, well that's foreshadowing for later for Jamie to pass the ball. And this is a
you are
comment.
such a smart TV watcher, my friend.
Well, and it's easy for me to say this on a podcast in retrospect, but this was the things that go through my mind because I think a lot of stuff they do, especially when they're on the pitch, is very deliberate in terms of what they show us because they don't want to spend a lot of time in this show
Tom,
playing soccer.
Yes. It's all it's all telegraphed, as they say.
Yeah. But again, this is something that happens a lot in games where if there's little time left, but the other team wants to score a goal, they're going to rip that ball out of that goal and take it to try to use whatever time is left.
Yeah, because it's not like the referee resets the ball. The player has the job of the player can bring it up to.
But the other team will celebrate for a long time. So yeah, a player can take the ball and they can put it right on the spot midfield to get ready to go. But like the ref will allow them to celebrate to a point, and then they'll bring them back over there.
It's like when Larry Fitz grabs the football when they need to rush up at the end of the fourth quarter, and he's getting the ball to the spot so they can start the next play.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Exactly what it is. My thought was, if only there was a coach of this team that could tell the players, hey, get ready because they're about to drive the ball. Like, stop celebrating. The game's not over. If only there was a coach or several coaches that could do this. But that's not what happens.
Well, I mean, it's the players' fault. Like, everybody's still excited. And this happens in games where, like, you'll get a late goal and you'll assume this game is over. And
really,
things can still happen, for sure. Yeah, like a late goal is not... Like, they scored, theoretically, they said there was 3 extra minutes. So they scored in the extra minutes. But that doesn't mean that, 93rd minute the game just gets blown. Like there's still the ref will add more time if after a goal scored and they had to.
I should have mentioned this in my speeches, but we play until the whistle.
Exactly.
Right? We play until the whistle.
So true. You play until Nate blows his whistle.
Which is often and too much. Jamie drives the ball down, and then critical moment here, as you mentioned, rather than taking the shot himself, he makes the extra pass. And they score the goal on Richmond, and essentially through the announcers, AFC Richmond is relegated. Did you, going into this episode, think they were going to win or lose?
I didn't think they would lose.
Okay.
I did not think they'd be relegated because we know there's a second season, which is currently being aired. I assumed they wanted to keep the Premier League moniker to be able to promote, say Man City and all that kind of stuff because I'm sure it brings in a certain audience. But it definitely was a shock when they scored.
Sure. So, sad song plays.
Yep.
By Marcus Mumford, of
Eminem.
Mumford and Sons. This guy does the intro music. The song is called "You'll Never Walk Alone." I watched the music video. It's like a video that was made in quarantine. So he has all the band members at their own homes, and then they kind of splice the music and the videos together. The lyrics that play walk on, with hope in your heart. You'll never walk alone.
Certainly extremely fitting for this episode. Like almost the episode was written for part of this, talking about hope and never walking alone, kind of a bit based on, especially Ted's speech here at the end. But this is a famous motto and phrase for Liverpool FC. They literally have this as part of their crest, says "Never walk alone."
Really?
Yeah. So it's by no means do they own that phrase. It's a very popular phrase, and
we're not going to get sued by saying
we will not get sued by Liverpool, hopefully. But yeah, it's incredibly impactful and very beautifully sung by Mr. Mumford.
So, do you think Mr. Mumford is a Liverpool fan?
It's possible
because he's British.
Yeah, we can look that up. There's some famous Liverpoolian or Liverpudlian fans.
Yeah, that's how you say that. I'm sure Lilliputian, I believe.
Lilliputian fans.
Ted gives an interview. He's congratulating the other team. He says, "Pep, Pep looked great out there." Yep. Brings Pep up again.
Yep.
Michelle decides to show up. Michelle sends a text to Ted and it's a picture of Henry's robot. And I don't know if you noticed, but Henry has something written there, or she says something like, "Hey, Henry wanted you to know that his robot is also a great coach, and the robot's name is MiracleBot 3000."
I did not see that. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's written on there.
That's cute.
And then as Ted's kind of walking through the facility, he looks into the training room and Jamie's sitting there. He starts to go in, and then out of nowhere, we find Jamie's dad is in there with him, and he's yelling at him and he's lecturing him about passing rather than shooting the goal. Is passing that bad? Let me ask you this. Your son is a premier soccer league player, Tom. Instead of scoring the winning goal to regulate a team, I'm assuming this wasn't like the championship, right?
For
There's
Man
more
City,
games to
yeah,
play, right?
No, this was the end of the season.
Okay.
So this is a season-ending game, and unless Man City, they didn't obviously tell us where
Is
Man
there
City
not a
was.
championship game?
No, no.
It's just whoever has the highest score?
Yep.
All right, well, you guys can complain about people not getting relegated. We have the Super Bowl, okay? And the Super Bowl is great. It's a final game where the best teams play against each other, and someone is the world champ.
I mean, we could dive into this, but I would argue that's not the case at all. You have 8-8 teams getting to the Super Bowl just because they happen to go on a run. To say they're the best team that year is a false.
So the best team in a Premier League plays the worst team in the Premier League, right? The best Manchester City, and because they were the best, right?
No, you have no idea. The schedule gets created at the beginning of the year. Okay. All 8 games, however many you play, are all spelled out.
So there's no playoff.
You play one at home and one away. So you have the same odds, the whole thing. So you don't know. You could have number one playing, number 30, whatever, 20. You just don't know where they're going to be at that point. So that's where it's odd because seemingly, unless Manchester City needed these 3 points to win the Premier League, which didn't seem like they did, this game didn't mean anything to them because their spot in the table was likely already determined at this point. So, and there is some other things that top tier teams play for. Like if you're in the top 4, you get to play in the Champions League. Not to add more confusion, but that's a big European club tournament. So there's still things to play for, whether you're at the top of the table or the bottom of the table. But all that being said, bringing it back to this is quite possibly the stupidest scene in the entire series to me. Because this just makes zero sense. There's no reason to do it. We already know that Jamie's dad is a jerk. The idea that Jamie is sitting in a training room in an away team and that his dad goes in there and is allowed to lecture him, like this to me was like laughably dumb and poorly written, in my opinion.
Okay.
Defend it.
I think you're wrong.
Okay.
I think it's important. I think we've established that Jamie, he made the comment when they were burning things in that episode that like he played for his dad.
Yes.
And his like bad attitude came from because his dad wanted him to be the like most successful or toughest on the field.
Yes.
So I think this is a moment that shows that Jamie is not just a prick, that he's human, and that even though this worked out for him, he still has to deal with an abusive father. The other thing that is important is that as much as they harass Americans for not having relegation, we have the playoffs in the Super Bowl. And that's the most important thing in the world because those things are incredible. Playoff games are great. Super Bowls are great. I think I defended that well. We'll move on. So then
I agree to disagree. I mean, I get your points about like wanting to like humanize Jamie, but I feel like they've done that. And when we see Jamie again at the end and kind of get the letter and stuff from Ted, like I feel like that is enough to continually humanize Jamie. To have to say that his dad is going to say like this is like a little league kind of thing like to happen. I just thought it was out of place and unnecessary.
Tom, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there are professional athletes whose parents act like this.
I don't
100%.
I don't disagree, but in a way.
And there are children who allow their parents still to have that kind of control over them because they're your parents.
Yeah.
And so what I think if this guy was Coach Taylor, he would have opened that door and punched that dude in the face. But he's Ted Lasso, which is okay. Coach Taylor and him are different people. So then we go to the Richmond locker room. The team is understandably sad. Ted's like, hey, give it up for Zorro. He made more saves than a Baptist preacher, which is
Yeah.
just a great line.
I'm glad they called out Zorro because then the announcers mentioned it. He
Oh,
crushed it that game. I'm glad Ted started with him.
yeah, it gives you the sense that, hey, they were getting through the defense.
Yeah.
It was the goalie that was keeping them in the game, which
Mhm.
is great. And I mean, Conan O'Brien would have been their goalie if he hadn't torn his butt.
True.
But since he tore his butt, he wasn't there. Ted is like, hey, be sad in this moment. He does the coach thing. Look at everyone in this room.
Mhm.
Let's be sad together. He says, hey, the only thing worse than being sad is being sad alone. So
Mhm.
at least we're sad together, which made me think like, I was like, is this a quarantine? Was this episode made during the quarantine? Which I did some research on, Tom,
Yeah.
and my answer is I don't know.
When did it
But
come
like
out? When did it release?
the way that I'm pretty sure it was all filmed before quarantine.
Episode aired October 2nd, 2020. So
Yeah, but it would have been filmed prior to
oh,
that.
I hear you. Okay.
So my comment is, and maybe this is why the show had such an impact during COVID and the
Yeah.
quarantine, is he makes the comment like, hey, being sad's bad, but you're being sad together as a
Mhm.
team. Like there's some power in that. If you were being sad alone, that would be the worst.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a powerful comment on, we deal with a lot of mental health stuff, especially with people having to be alone, having to quarantine. And so Tom and I would just like to let everyone know listening, you're not alone. We love you all.
Yeah. You always have a space in our heart and on our Twitter account.
We have Twitter?
We do. We do have Twitter.
Oh, interesting.
Believe it or not.
Okay.
But I agree. So this was a good. Do you put this in the same classification as like the earlier kind of coach speeches where it's kind of like, you've heard it before, or does this have more impact for you?
No, I like this speech better. I think a speech after a defeat, like that's got to be a tough thing to do.
Well,
Like
especially this level of defeat, right?
You've strived so hard, you came up short because of poor coaching, not telling the people to stop celebrating and get back on the field. But I do appreciate his, hey, be sad, but he does start it off by saying, hey, you guys gave the champ. He calls them the champs, so
Yeah.
they must. He's like, hey, you gave the best a run for their money, essentially. But hey, be sad, and then let's move on. Like,
Mhm.
let's forget about it and let's be
Must be a goldfish.
goldfish.
Yeah, calls back on Sam, and Sam does it. And this was like great. This kind of got me like almost choked up a little bit when
Sure.
Sam did that. Like Sam gives him that look too, which I thought was just really good. Like he kind of knows where Ted's going, and Ted tells the teams like, hey, we gotta be a goldfish. We gotta rise above this and forget it and move on.
Sure. So appreciate the moment you've been through, be sad together, and then forget about it so we can work on next season. We cut to the Manchester City bus leaving. I don't know what it is. Every time they film at night, it feels like it's lit by emergency flares.
The flare was great.
It was like someone popped a bunch of emergency flares, like they were landing a helicopter to evac someone.
Well, they do flares in a lot of football games. Like your team scores, and light up a flare in the thing. But it seemed like this flare was more for like directing traffic or getting
Yeah.
this bus out of there.
I don't know. It gave it an eerie feel, which actually fit with the scene. But Beard walks up to Jamie as he's getting on, and Jamie's like, "What do you want?" Beard's always so polite to Jamie.
Yeah.
He's just like, "Hey, have a good night, Jamie."
Yeah,
He hands
night,
him a
Jamie.
letter. Jamie sits on the bus and reads the letter. And what does the letter say, Tom?
The letter says, "Way to make that extra pass," and it's from Ted. Does it just say Ted?
From Ted.
Yeah.
And it's also got a toy soldier in there. The music comes back. This is important because one of the things Ted like focused on with Jamie is like, hey, be a team player.
Mhm.
Like it's not just about you, it's about the other 11 people. Like I'm sure scoring the game-winning goal is important to Jamie, but if he can get out of his own way and realize the team is more important and make that extra pass,
Mhm.
that's an unselfish act for the team. And so I really enjoyed how they like ended that kind of loop with Jamie. I thought
agree.
it was impactful.
Yeah, I'm glad exactly kind of buttoned that whole sequence, or the way they've kind of had that relationship all series, where it kind of gave Ted the last word in it, and still gave us hope for Jamie to
Sure.
potentially turn around. Because those moments where he's shooting and he scores the goal, I think those are fleeting. If Jamie can learn to make that extra pass and be just a better all around player, he's gonna be more satisfied.
Sure. So my question to you is, if you didn't have the scene with the dad yelling at Jamie and you kind of feeling for Jamie, and we got to this scene, like say that scene didn't exist, you got to this scene, do you think it would still have the same impact?
I personally do.
Okay.
I get. I mean, that's just for me. Maybe it's because I hate that scene so much. I
Right,
think
right,
it's so
right.
out of place. But I think they've told us enough in the show, and that's what I think sometimes they do. Where we're doing a podcast on this, we're doing deep dives into all this, watching it multiple times, so we remember those scenes. We remember Jamie being giving that story about around the fire about his
Sure.
big dad kind of being abusive and all that stuff. So I get that you want to tell that back to the
Right, it's
audience.
kind of a reminder.
Yeah,
Hey,
that hey,
Jamie's
yeah,
coming from a rougher.
and there's not an easy way to do that. So that's the way they chose to do it. I guess I would just think that maybe there, I don't know what it is, but maybe there's a better way to do that. But I do think that you could potentially even show just kind of Jamie coming off the pitch and seeing the devastation of his former teammates and just kind of seeing like how they're all down and maybe him just giving an extra glance or look
Right,
and I don't know something. But
right.
yeah, really impactful. I think the toy soldier I almost missed, but I think what was it? It was a Samuel Basanya. It was getting the toy soldier from Ted, and he
Yes,
kind of gave that scoff, right?
the interaction is when Ted gets the care package from his son, he's got all the soldiers, and so he's kind of handing them out to different people. And it's Sam's birthday. He gives Sam the soldier. He's like, hey, my son gave this to me. I'm homesick. This is for protection. Jamie witnesses that and just thinks it's
Yeah,
dumb.
exactly. He, like laughs it off, and just
Right.
yeah, and that was like one of those early Jamie moments where like, man, this guy's an absolute jerk. And
Right.
I didn't get that at first when I saw him get that toy soldier, but kind of thinking back on that, that's why it's so impactful to Jamie. He's realizing that like, hey, there's a reason behind this, and he's not a bad guy.
Right. So then I think we go to the next day. Ted
I think it's that night.
Is it that night?
Yeah, because I think Rebecca's still in the same garb she had in the locker room, and I think you can see outside it's dark.
Okay. Ted runs into Higgins. We find out that Higgins' first name is Leslie. He's like, I'm what is known as a feminine junior because Leslie was his,
I
I
never
guess,
heard that before.
mom's name.
Is that
Yeah,
a thing?
I don't know.
Is it odd that Ted doesn't know his name? Like Ted is surprised by his first name being Leslie. Ted is all about knowing names. You figure he would have asked what is Higgins' first name.
I think it is odd, but I don't know. Maybe Higgins I don't know. Yeah, good point.
It's just a good point.
Great point.
I also thought too, I got the sense when they were like Higgins does the handshake, I'm like, did they let Higgins go? Is this like a final goodbye to them? It seemed a little out of place.
I think they're trying to tip the hat that Ted's going to get fired.
Yeah,
And so Higgins is almost like, hey, goodbye, good luck.
Mhm.
It was fun while it lasted.
And it's the end of the season too, so you're probably not going to be around each other as much as well. But
Right.
yep,
Ted tries to resign on a takeout menu.
It's legal. I signed
It's got my signature, so it counts. Rebecca won't accept it. She says, hey, we need to talk about next season. And then you see Ted start to talk about that teams can get promoted. So if they can get relegated, they can get promoted. So
Which is
all
great
they
on a
have
resume.
to do
Great on a resume, getting promoted.
great on a resume. So all they have to do is come back, win the league next year, come back to the Premier League, and then win the Premier League, which is funny because the show was always pitched as a 3-season show.
There's your
And
arc.
so they're kind of telegraphing, hey, they get sent down. Next season, the hope is they get sent back up at the end of it. And then the third season is them winning it all in the Premier League. That's how I see it.
No, it's literally 100%. Like when you said 3 seasons, I didn't realize that was what they had scoped. That's got to be like Ted literally lays it out right there.
Right.
Let's make predictions. Do you think? I would imagine end of season 2 they're going to get up to the Premier League. Say that happens. Season 3, do you think they win it all? Do you think they just have a decent season, they learn from it and grow? What's your call?
So season 3, they find out they're renewed for 3 more seasons. So it's going to be a 6-season show at that point.
Okay.
So it's going to be something where they get on an airplane, the airplane crashes, they find themselves on an island,
Ooh.
and then there's like a monster that's made of smoke, and they find out how to play American football. And then the show gets canceled shortly after that.
I would totally watch a lost reboot
version
with all the cast from Ted Lasso.
Yeah. So no, I think essentially I don't have any idea what happens in season 2. It's going on right now. I don't know. But I do think that's how it plays out. Gets relegated, gets promoted, and then the last season
Think they'll win
is
it?
yeah. Do I think they'll win it? No. I think Explosions in the Sky will play and they will lose it just like Coach Taylor and the Dillon Panthers.
I will bet you $5 they win it.
Okay, so will you look up there?
I will bet Julian $5.
No, not at the camera, above
No.
the camera.
Oh, there's a $5 bill.
There you
above
go.
the
Get your
camera.
$5 bill. There you go. Congratulations.
Oh, we
Tom
did it.
is getting his $5 bill. It was hanging in the room.
Did you hear that?
All right, and the final joke of the season is what, Tom? One of your favorite sight gags.
Yeah, Ted's spit take right in Rebecca's face because of the bubbly water.
Bubbly water.
And they do that last final cut where it's like, oh,
she's
sorry,
drenched.
did that get to Anya? And she is just soaking wet.
Drenched. Yep. Rebecca's drenched.
Good
so, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, man, I had a fantastic time. Like, I had my gripes, but I mean, my gripes were nothing in comparison to the love and admiration I had for this show with just the story they were telling. You know, obviously, I coming as from a soccer background, there were just so many of these things that kind of spoke to me that I was always going to watch this show, just hadn't got around to it. And when you had mentioned you had seen it all the way through and this had impacted you, I was absolutely down to do it. And I've had fantastic time doing this with you. You know, I'm jazzed and excited to start season 2 up soon.
Sure. We're going to plan on doing season 2. Obviously I enjoyed this. I was the essential catalyst for us watching this first season and talking about it together. You know, a lot of themes, hope, forgiveness, him just being positive.
Mm-hmm.
I like Ted Lasso. I have no idea how season 2 is going to go. I'm interested from the perspective of, I think Lasso, the first season came out during like COVID and quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people were like ready for something that was like hopeful, heartfelt and like was like like a warm blanket for them. And so I'm interested to see how like season 2 goes. I also think that like those things like hope and forgiveness, like there's got to be some substance behind them. They can't just be buzzwords.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you were on this journey with me. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the soccer takes because I mean, other than being a championship soccer player when I was, I don't know, 2.5, it's been a long time since I've played the game. But Tom and I are planning on doing season 2, and we would like to thank John out in Louisiana.
Yeah.
John reached out to us, gave us some good feedback. John, we appreciate you. Thank you for your service. And Tom and I will be seeing you for season 2 shortly.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any questions or have any suggestions, please reach out to us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com.
Yep.
And I've been informed we have a Twitter. What is our Twitter, Tom?
We have a Twitter handle. It's at Team Binge. So yeah, shoot us a line if you have any thoughts, questions, suggestions. We might do a little recap episode or pod for season 1, just kind of talking through overall themes and kind of thoughts. Maybe watch the trailer for season 2 and kind of get all jazzed and ever for that. But yeah, we'll definitely go back in it again. We'll probably do it episodically for season 2 together, as opposed to you watching the whole thing. I have not
seen any of them, so Tom and I will be going into it fresh, which will be interesting. And we have done no research we have no prior knowledge of season 2.
Constantly trying to hide like, you know, Google News feeds that are telling me what's going on in the season 2. I think I've done a good job of keeping away from spoilers. So yeah, excited to do it. And again, thank you, Julian, for suggesting this. I had a great time, and we hope you enjoyed listening.
You're welcome, Tom. And for those of you, we rarely say these things, but we probably should. If you would please tell a friend, rate, review, do all those silly things that you're supposed to do with a podcast. Do we really care? No, but it's something that should be said. And from Team Binge, I have been Julian.
And I've been Tom.
And we appreciate you listening to us. We'll see you for season 2 of Ted Lasso.
Football is life.
Football is life.